Hi class, in this video we are going to discuss how to sketch the graph of a rational function. So let's recall the important terms that were discussed in our previous video. So we have the domain, the set of all x values. So ang ating domain, nagkakaroon tayo ng restrictions kasi dahil sa definition ng rational function wherein sabi doon that your denominator should not be equal to 0. So any values or any real numbers can be input to our function. However, you have to consider that the denominator should not be equal to 0. So that is the domain. And then we have the intercepts. So these are the points na i-intersect sa ating x and y axis. So specifically, our y-intercept for y-axis and x-intercept for x-axis. And aside from x-axis, x-intercept, we also discuss the zeros. So, ang pagkakaiba lang naman nila is that the zero is the value of x, while the x-intercept is a point. So, it is expressed in an ordered pair. Then, we also have discussed yung asymptotes. Ito yung imaginary line that wherein yung x and y mo are approaching or they are getting closer. However, they will not intersect. The graph will not intersect these particular lines. They will just get closer as your x or y increases or decreases without bound. So specifically for vertical asymptote, meron tayo, we find the value of x where the denominator of the reduced rational function is 0. So it is just related to our domain, yung ating vertical asymptote, while our horizontal asymptote can be computed when we try to compare the degrees of our numerator and denominator. Then may mga ruling lang na diniscuss sa ating previous videos. And then we also have the range. Range can be easily identified kapag yung function mo ay nakagraph. Mabilis siyang makita. Pero meron din tayong way on how to solve for the range, specifically when you try to express your f of x equal to y. Then after that is getting the inverse of the function and solving for y in terms of the values of x. So, yan po lahat ng mga details na yan ang hahanapin natin dito sa ating mga susunod na videos. And then from there, from those information, we can sketch our graph. So, sketching, it means that we are not going to use GeoGebra or Desmos. Pero at some part of our video, we are still going to use it. However, for basis na lang yun, for checking na lang. Pero kasi dito, our purpose is to sketch para magkaroon kayo ng idea just in case na in an exam or in a assessment, you will have an idea na given this graph, given this equation, the graph is this one or this is the domain, or you know how to describe or to explain the graph itself. Kapag marunong ka, syempre mag-sketch mismo ng pinaka-graph ng rational function. Now, let's proceed na in some examples on how to sketch. Isa-isahin natin yung iba't ibang example natin in how to sketch our rational functions. So, let's have this example number 1. So, let's try to sketch muna yung ating f of x is equal to 2 over x plus 1. So, our domain can easily be identified in here because our domain can be solved by just equating our denominator. So, ang limitation or restriction ng ating domain will be based on our denominator. So, solution, you will have x plus 1 is equal to 0. So, our x now is equal to negative 1. So, aside from the restriction, ito pong x is equal to negative 1 na natin. Automatically, it will be our vertical asymptote. It will be our vertical asymptote. No? Then, from here, you will identify, you can now write your domain as x such that x is an element of a real number where x is not equal to negative 1. Or in an interval notation, that is negative infinity, negative 1, union of negative 1, positive infinity. Ayan. So next, how about the x and y-intercept of this graph? So the x-intercept can be easily computed, or you can easily find your x-intercept because you just get, or you just equate your numerator. So for this instance, 2 equal to 0. And obviously, 2 equal to 0 is a false statement. Therefore, you can conclude that this function f of x has no 0. Has no 0 siya. How about for our y-intercept? So, y-intercept, ito yung point na nasa y-axis, no? So, that is 0, y. Obviously, you're going to make your x equal to 0. So, you let your x equal to 0. Therefore, you'll just simply evaluating your f of x. So, substitute mo lang or replace mo lang po yung value ng iyong x ng 0. So, you will get 2 sa numerator and 1 plus 0 is 1. So, therefore, your f of 0 is equal to 2, which is equal to also to y is equal to 2. Therefore, ano magiging y-intercept natin? Our y-intercept is 0, 2. Ayan. So, meron na tayong domain, vertical asymptote, meron na tayong x and y intercept. Now, ito vertical asymptote na mention na natin kanina. So, let's skip that and let's proceed with our horizontal asymptote. So, to get the horizontal asymptote, we have to compare the degree of the numerator with the denominator. So, for this instance, ang numerator natin is constant lang. So, obviously, ang ating numerator or ang ating end dyan is 0. Why po 0? Actually, itong constant term natin, meron niyang variable which is x raised to 0. And x raised to 0 is simply equal to 1. So, therefore, hindi na po siya sinusulat. So, ang exponent or ang degree ng ating 2 na numerator is 0. And then, dito sa ating denominator, madali lang kasi ang degree ng ating x is 1. And when you compare our numerator with our denominator, obviously, our numerator is less than our denominator. Therefore, ano daw sabi? Pag less than ang iyong numerator kaysa sa denominator, your horizontal asymptote will be y equal to 0. Ayan. Y equal to 0 daw po. So, before we construct our table of sign, try na po nating sketch yung mga nakuha natin. So, first domain natin or yung ating vertical asymptote is negative 1. So, ang vertical asymptote natin starts with negative 1. Tama ba? Tama. So, negative 1, draw tayo ng broken lines from here. Ayan. So, this is the graph of a x is equal to negative 1. Then, aside from that, we have also taken or solved for the y. Y-intercept naman, no? Y-intercept natin is 0, 2. Y-intercept natin is 0, 2. So, that is 0, 2. Andito daw. Yan yung point na yan. Let's say that this is point A, which is A is 0, 2. Next, ang x-intercept natin ay wala. Then, ang ating horizontal intercept is y is equal to 0. So, ito yon. Ito ang ating y is equal to 0. Draw lang natin siya in broken lines. This is the graph of y is equal to 0. Ano pa ba? let's see, horizontal asymptote, meron na. Vertical asymptote, meron tayo. Intercepts and the domain. Okay? Now, here is the primary sketch mo ng iyong magiging graph. Now, titingnan na natin kung ano na magiging direction or behavior ng ating graph. So, we can evaluate that by using table of signs. So, ang ating table of signs ay makukuha first, kailangan nating mag-identify ng ating intervals. And obviously, dito, to get the intervals, you have to equate your numerators and denominator. So, para sa ating numerator, wala naman tayong ma-equate dyan. That is already positive 2. So, dun tayo sa ating denominator, which is x is equal to 1. And x is equal to 1 is x is equal to, pag in-equate natin yan, magiging x is equal to negative 1. Kanina pa natin na-solve yan. So, di na lang pinakita ni ma'am yung solving. So, ibig sabihin po nito, yung interval natin at specific negative 1, ayan, dyan sa negative 1 na yan, we have to represent the interval to positive infinity and another interval from your negative 1 to negative infinity. So, dapat, ang mangyari niyan, that is negative infinity, negative 1, and negative 1, positive infinity. So, ibig sabihin, ang ating x dito ay dalawa. So, ang x natin, pagpapuntang negative, that is less than negative 1. And kapag naman po papuntang positive, greater than negative 1. Yan yung ating magiging interval. Now, after ng ating interval, you will have or we will assign a test point. For test point, kuha lang tayo ng integer na nagre-represent dito sa x is less than negative 1. So, halimbawa, x natin is negative 2. Then, next, x is greater than negative 1. So, let's say x natin is equal to 0. Sa ngayon kasi ang ating numerator is 2, so we don't need to solve or to test the table of signs niyan or sign niyan. So, diretso na tayo sa ating denominator which is x plus 1. So, when we try to substitute negative 2 with x plus 1, anong magiging sign niya? That is negative 2 plus 1. So, you will have negative. And for the positive, 0, 0 plus 1, you will have positive. Then, solve na natin yung ating 2 over x plus 1. 2 over x plus 1. Okay. So, 2 over negative. 2 divided by negative, negative. 2 divided by positive, positive. So, ibig sabihin po, ano magiging behavior nito sa ating graph? So, it only implies that our graph is above for the negative rather. So, pagka ang ating table of values ay negative, so ibig sabihin nito our graph is below x-axis, and for the positive, ito ay above x-axis. Below x-axis, above x-axis. So, negative 2 and 0 yan, no? So, balik tayo sa ating in-sketch kanina. Nasaan ang negative 2? Andito, ang ating negative 2, right? Ayan. So, negative 2 daw natin is below x-axis. So, therefore, kung i-sketch natin yan, most likely, ang graph daw natin ganitong itsura. Ayan, magiging ganyan ang ating itsura ng graph pag in-sketch natin. Then, doon naman po sa kanina sabi, positive, 0 yun, no? 0 ang ating test point. From 0, positive daw po siya. So, dito banda, sa upper part, makikita yung iyong graph. And make sure, remember that tatama siya sa ating 2. 0, 2. So, therefore, pag in-sketch mo yan, ganito magiging itsura niyan. Dapat. Then, ayan. Sketching pa naman to, you can test this one, yung accuracy niyan sa ating mga software. So, let's try to check if ganito po ba magiging kalalabasan. sa ating GeoGebra. That is y is equal to 2 over x plus 1. Ayan, x plus 1. Then, sabi daw ay mayroon siyang point at point 0, 2 mag-i-intersect siya. And meron tayong x-intercept na equal sa, ano yun? Negative 1. And ang ating y is equal to 0. Try nating iset ang kanyang colors. Say this is violet and this one, equation number 2. Let's set it. Ba ito? Okay, ayan. Ayan, so pag zoom in natin, obviously, makikita mo na at 0.02, tumama yung iyong graph, then tama yung behavior na nakita natin or inassign natin dun sa ating table of values. Ayan, 'di ba? Ito yung below. Ito yung nasa below x-axis natin kanina. And ito naman yung nasa above x-axis natin. So, that is how you sketch a graph of a rational function. Lastly, let's have the range of the function f of x is equal to 2 over x plus 1. So, without solving, gamit yung ating graph, you can now easily identify the range of your graph. So, obviously, dito po sa ating sketch, malalaman mo na your graph is approaching y is equal to 0, both increasing and decreasing. So, they are as your x approach to positive infinity and as it approach your negative infinity, mapapansin mo na papalapit ng papalapit siya sa iyong y is equal to 0. So, therefore, the range of this function is range is y such that y is an element of a real number where y is not equal to 0 or negative infinity 0 union of 0 positive infinity. Ayan po. So that's it for our example number 1.